In 2001, Ontario's Progressive Conservative government introduced legislation to allow the Crown to confiscate property that might one day be used in a crime, or that might have been purchased with the proceeds of a crime. Before the bill was made law, and before hearings were held to get public opinion on the bill, Freedom Party's Paul McKeever appeared on Rhonda London Live to discuss the legislation. He was preceded by an academic and a police officer.
Welcome back to Rhonda London Live. The Ontario government wants to crack down on organized crime by making it easier to seize the proceeds and the property of crime from organized criminals. What do you think about this? Joining our conversation, Staff Superintendent Rocco Cleveland. He heads up detective support for the Toronto Police Service. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi.
Obviously, you're in favor of this proposed legislation.
Well, I think the police services in Ontario would certainly be in favor of it. It's another tool in the basket for us.
Isn't there an easier way, though, to go after organized crime? What about just building better cases and prosecuting criminals in the criminal court?
Well, we build better cases to prosecute criminals, and I think we do a fine job at the prosecution end of things with the tools that we have at the present time. But we're always looking for new tools, new opportunities. We have to remember this is a global market. Organized crime is a global issue. Canada is influenced by organized crime. It's an issue that we have to deal with. We have to be out in front of it all the time. And I don't think there's a problem with exploring new avenues.
But what mechanism is in place, though, to protect the innocent? Well, and the very basis of Canadian law is the assumption of innocence.
Well, let's not demonize the police in this issue. The police are the lawful authority for the people in this country. We are those that are put out there on the front line to try and deal with these things. The governments, the government of Canada, the government of Ontario, try to assist the community here in dealing with the problem of crime, be it organized crime, be it just crime in the street. I think what we're trying to assess here and what we're trying to deal with is the issue of organized crime through any means available to us to deal with some of the issues, such as the profits from telemarketing issues, the profits from credit card scams, the profits from drugs, those kinds of issues. So I think let's not demonize the police as being the individuals out there seizing the innocent individuals' assets. That is not the intent of this law, and it's certainly not the intent of the police.
But doesn't it open the door, though, to potential abuse? Let's just say, even if just a mistake is made, or the scenario that I talked about at the top of the show, where somebody gets annoyed at you, or someone is out to get you, and they phone up the police and they make a bogus claim. Let's say you're running a drug house. You're selling drugs out of your house.
Let's remember the responsibility of the police in these issues is to conduct a thorough investigation of the matter. And I mean, to me, it's...
But shouldn't that investigation, though, be conducted beyond a reasonable doubt rather than just the preponderance of the evidence?
The investigation in the first instance is certainly going to deal with the issue of you and whether or not you're trafficking in drugs. And if there is an opportunity to arrest you and deal with the issue through the normal criminal process, then that is going to be the avenue that is taken. What we're talking about here is, in reality, those assets that are out of country, those assets, especially in the matters of telephone scams that go on, of the 411 scams that go on, where we have large amounts of assets going out of country through the banks in this province, and the ability of the police to, in a timely fashion, seize those assets so that they do not disappear. Some of the trials involved in these issues are 7 years in length, and over those 7-year periods, these assets just disappear. And what I think the government is trying to do in this case is to deal with the issue of seizing those assets so that they can be held. We're not talking about the ma and pa issues here. We're talking about large organized crime issues. And I would think that there would have to be some faith in our judicial system, first and foremost, that these issues have to go before This is not a police officer in a station making a decision to seize assets. This goes before a gatekeeper, this goes before the courts, this goes before the judiciary, and those are the checks and balances that are in place and will be there.
But what's frightening to me as just an ordinary citizen, it's frightening to me that assets can be seized without a criminal charge even being laid.
No, well, I don't know that that's necessarily the case.
McKeever says that
yes.
That's the scenario, that could happen.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of this legislation.
It is one of the opportunities. But I think, quite frankly, the issue is the police are engaged in the prevention of crime. The police are engaged in the prosecution of criminals that are involved in crime. But there also has to be a balance here in respect to issues such as Martin, where you have to balance the cost of a prosecution. If there is evidence in regards to criminal activity with large proceeds being drained off of our community, then we have to have the ability in some fashion to weigh against the cost of a prosecution in the millions of dollars versus the seizure of assets. To me, this is another tool. That's what it is. It is not the be-all and end-all. It is not the answer. It is an opportunity to have another tool in the box to deal with the issues.
But if I'm driving down the QEW and I get a speeding ticket, let's say just $185 speeding ticket, I get my day in court.
Yes, you do.
I enjoy due process.
Yes, you do.
This legislation circumvents that.
No, there is due process in the civil courts as well as there is in the criminal courts.
Yeah, but in the criminal courts, you have to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt.
The Crown, yes.
With a surety. In civil court, it's a much lesser standard.
It's a preponderance. Yes, it is. It is.
So okay, you know what preponderance of the evidence means? It means more likely than not.
Yes.
Well, that's wide enough to drive a truck through.
Yes, but I think, again, there has to be some faith in the judiciary here, and certainly in the Crown Law Office and in the police services at large. Are there problems? Yes, there are problems. There are problems in every part of society, but I think, quite frankly, we deal with those problems as they come to us. We deal with them when we have issues such as members of both the judiciary and the police services that are not up to standard. However, we still have to have and be looking at the best way of dealing with some of the issues that are taking huge amounts of money out of our society. The cost to the medical aspect of our the medical costs that we have to endure, I would say the credit card ratings that all of us have to deal with, the insurance rates that we all have to deal with, all of those issues in some way are impacted by organized crime. If we have large credit card scams, who pays for that? Certainly it's the users of credit cards in increased interest rates. Those are things that are just, somebody has to pay the price. Why should it be the public?
Okay, our phones are ringing. Let's go to Antonio on line 8. Go ahead, Antonio. You're on the air.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question here that,
sure.
If I'm driving along in my car and I'm suspected of being or knowing people that are involved in organized crime, will my car, even though that I'm not involved in organized crime, be seized? And that's what I'm worried about. And if it is seized, then I got to wait to go through the whole process and the court systems and legal fees and this and that. And in the meantime, my car may be sold in the meantime. And then after, what's going to end up happening? Now, what the gentleman is saying, I understand that it's another tool for police, but police don't actually have that much time to just sit there and make a decision. They make split decisions, and then they leave it up to the courts and the prosecutors to get enough evidence to, seize and prosecute people on crimes like this. And I think that it's going to work in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, I think a lot of innocent people are going to be dragged through the whole system.
Antonio, I want to thank you so much for your phone call. What about the question of guilt by association?
Well, the last time I looked in the criminal code, it wasn't there, and I don't think it is today, and I don't see that as a real issue. The caller was absolutely right. There's more than enough high-end issues to keep the police busy on a daily basis. The issue of an individual driving down the street with his car, and because he is thought to be associated in having that car seized, is not a reality. It's simply not a reality. Yes, there have been lessons learned. There have been mistakes made, and I'd like to people to remember that. Again, it is not the police services that create these laws. Our job is to enforce the laws, and we will enforce the laws with the regulations that are built around them, and we will enforce the laws as they're created by the governments of this country. We do not interpret the laws. The laws are interpreted by the Crown Law Office, by common law, by the bench. That's where those interpretations belong. And we take great pride in the fact that we listen, and we are directed by the bench, and we are directed by the Crown Law Office of this province. I think we do very well in respect to it. Can we do better? Certainly. We can always do better. And I would say to you and to the people that we are always trying to do a better job in respect to the issues of what the public is required to pay as a result of crime in this province.
Okay, I want to talk to you more. First, we have to take a commercial break. Couple phone lines open right now. The number to call, 905-332-3131 or 416-203-0302. We're back with more right after these messages. Welcome back to Rhonda London Live. The Ontario government is going after organized crime by trying to hit criminals where it hurts the most, right in the pocketbook. Phone's quite busy today. Let's go to Phil on line 3. Go ahead, Phil. You're on the air. Hi, Phil. Go ahead. You're on the air.
One is maybe it's that the provincial government is looking to decrease its funding now by opening up this avenue for the policemen to help generate their revenue. The other thing is we've already have so many problems with policemen abusing their power in this country, getting charged, half of them never getting prosecuted, and here we are handing over more rights to them, for them to subject innocent people to more abuse, and then there's no remedy to fix it.
Okay, Phil, I want to thank you for your phone call. Do you think that's a fair comment?
No. No, I don't. I think you see policemen being prosecuted, and I think, quite frankly, that the police services in this province, at any rate, take great pride in keeping their own house clean, and I think we've shown that. Nobody likes bad cops more than cops, and no, that's just a distasteful situation for us. We ferret out those that don't belong, quite frankly, as quickly as possible. But again, those people too are permitted due course and justice. They are innocent until proven guilty, and because it's in the headlines doesn't make it so.
Well, this legislation, though, because it is so broad, and because it takes what is essentially a criminal matter to civil court, even if there's no intended police malfeasance, doesn't it open the door, though, to mistakes being made?
Yes, unfortunately, there are human beings involved, and there will be mistakes made. That's the nature of being a human being, I think.
See, but if there are mistakes made at the criminal level, I mean, at least you have due process, and the case has to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. There's a good chance that you will be exonerated, although mistakes are still made. Look at Guy Paul Morin.
Absolutely. There are mistakes made because we don't live in a perfect society. I agree with you. But let's remember that there are gatekeepers here, that there is the courts, that there is the bench, that there is the Crown prosecutors, that there is the defense counsel in regards to these matters. Those are the gatekeepers. I have great faith in our judicial system. I believe in our judicial system. I think it works both ways, both on part of the society and part of the criminal. I believe that people are innocent until proven guilty. I believe that there's a separation in issues here. We're talking not about the criminal issues. We're talking about civil aspect in dealing with some of the monies that's siphoned off of our society.
But it's pretty punitive, though, if the Ontario government or the police department steps in and seizes your house and freezes...
To whom? It's punitive to whom?
Okay.
The criminal.
Well, let's just say that you're not, let's presume innocence. Let's say that you're not a criminal. You're accused of being a criminal. Your house is seized. Your car is seized. Your bank account is frozen.
A terrible mistake. We're talking about a very large...
That's pretty punitive.
But
I think a lot of people would rather
large...
spend time in jail or even in prison
No, they wouldn't.
than to lose all of their material wealth.
Well, I don't think they want to spend time in jail, but I do believe that, again, that there are checks and balances in place. If someone's house and car and all of their belongings are seized, I would suggest to you that behind those seizures there has been a very considered effort in respect to ascertaining where the monies came from, who the individual is, and there would have been a considerable amount of investigation prior to any seizure of those assets, home or car.
But if it's so considered, why can't you prove it in criminal court? Why not? Why not prove it beyond reasonable doubt?
Well, I think one of the issues in proving the issue of organized crime and membership in organized crime is addressed in legislation which has already been spoken about here in respect to the C-95 legislation, and there are grave difficulties in respect to the C-95 legislation, in my considered opinion. I think the issue of having to prove the 10 basic facts on each individual in respect to the prosecution, and that's not to say that that's not a good test or that it's not a good measure of what organized crime should be and how to prove organized crime. However, we spend millions and millions of dollars in this province in criminal prosecutions without any asset seizure. Millions of dollars. I think one of the most successful cases that I've seen in respect to organized crime was Project Omerta, which was a joint forces project which in fact seized assets worldwide. That was a 3.5-year project that involved incredible resources around the country and around the world, both from the joint forces project through CFSEU, through the combined efforts of police agencies around the world. And there was some criminal asset seizures in respect to that after the fact. Many of the assets were siphoned off during the course of the investigation, during the course of the prosecution, which will never be received back by this country.
Rocco Cleveland, our time is gone, but I want to thank you.
It's been fun.
So much for joining us today on the show. Don't go away. We're going to continue this conversation with a legal perspective on the issue. A couple phone lines open right now. I want to hear your thoughts. The number to call is 416-203-0302.